Alright, so I'm having to completely remake this video because I fucked up my audio settings and you couldn't hear me at all. So here we are. But that allows me to condense it a little bit. The last one was like 15 minutes. We'll try and shove that down even shorter. But there's been some discussion recently about the lack of the player base in World of Warcraft currently in retail. But I don't really think that's necessarily the case. Because honestly, this is just how big content patches go, right? You have your big patch, everybody's here, they're doing the stuff, and especially with the new upgrade system, they get what they want, and then they'll log in next week to do their stuff. So a few less will log in, a few less. There are the people that will log in every single week because they want to do their raids and get their mythic vault and do the dungeons, that kind of thing. There are some people that will log in every week to do their mount runs, transmog runs, that kind of thing. The recent addition of the Traveler's Tender and the Trading Post, or the Trading Tender, whatever it's called, is a good addition to the game in terms of retention, because it also has interesting rewards that they want to be good rewards for people playing every single month. So that's another thing that they've added to the game. It also adds a new avenue of monetization, obviously, that we've seen through bundles and that kind of thing, but I don't really care. It's more than what we had before, and I think the Trading Post is actually pretty decent until they really start locking away the good stuff from us. Then I think people will start having an issue with it. But for the most part, it's pretty good so far. So obviously, as a content patch comes and goes, bunch at the start, and it weans itself down until a new content patch. That's just how it works. That is how it works with all MMOs. That is not different from anything else, right? But there are a few things that I think do lead to this kind of lower content thing. First and foremost, in terms of the player base, we do have to consider Shadowlands. Because there is data that shows from other video game franchises that, for example, if let's say the first game was really good and the second game was really bad, the first game will sell decently. The second game, even though it's bad, will sell well. And then the third game, even if the third game is good, if the second game sold poorly, people will feel burned on it and they won't buy the third game, right? They won't buy the third game. If the third game does good, then they'll maybe buy the fourth game because then they have faith in it. It's the same thing with the expansions. People had a lot of issues with Shadowlands, so because they had a lot of issues, that's bleeding into Dragonflight, even though it is a pretty good expansion, all things considered, right? It is a pretty decent expansion. There are a few missteps here and there, but I think they're doing really good. I think, actually, I'll get into that a little later. So I'll talk about that a little later, but that's why I think we're also seeing what would be relatively considered a lower player base than expected, with how good the content in the expansion has been so far, just because of the problems of Shadowlands. The other thing is, on top of people just playing less throughout the weeks as the expansion or as the patches go on, this is the first time we've had a gearing system that really gives us rewards very quickly. By the end of week 3, you could be essentially mythic geared no matter what content you're doing. Well, you have to do content that gives you gear that it's at least on the hero track, right? But right now, let's say you were farming 17s to get 431s, you got your 431s, you're geared up through your crests, and you are full 441 in a matter of 3 weeks. But let's say you wanted to make an alt character now, and you want to play that character. How long would that take? Because the time investment required for alt accounts, or alt characters, is a little more significant than I think it should be. I think that main characters should be allowed to send alternate characters. If anything, at least the heroic quality materials, so that like the heroic worms quests at a 2-to-1 ratio, because I have like 75 plus of those things in my bags, right? If I could send 40 of them over to my new character here, just because I was playing the game, and get that character up to like 437 pretty quickly, cool, that'd be sick. But right now, account progression is something they really do need to work on, but that'll be for a different video. Or the next video, I guess. Because it takes a long time, right? If you drop gear at 431, that requires 30 heroic crests and 15 mythic crests. 30 times 15, because you need 15 crests to make, or 15 shards to make a crest, divided by 12, because that's the amount of shards that you get from a successful dungeon completion. So this is only on the assumption you complete every single dungeon successfully in time. 38. So for the mythic crest, it's 15 divided by 12. That is 19. We'll do 38 plus 19. Cool. Then we have, let's say, it'll take about 24 minutes, right? We'll do 24 minutes, which sometimes it'll be longer, sometimes it'll be shorter, depending on the pugs, right? On average, 24 minutes a dungeon. We'll divide that by 60, which is hours, and that is 23 raw hours of gameplay. Not getting to the dungeon, not looking for a group, not building your own group, any of that stuff. Just raw gameplay to just farm the crests yourself to get to 441 from 431 gear. And that is to say without raiding as well. But if you're just doing Mythic Plus, that's a significant amount of time, especially for a casual player. So when they're looking at 20 plus hours just to gear another character 10 item levels, that's not really fucking worth it for them, especially if they're not trying to Mythic raid or do anything like that. So that's another reason why people aren't really investing a lot of time into Mythic Plus, because it's just not worth the time, because their main character can't help their alts with anything. It might reduce the, I think it reduces the flight stone cost of your alt characters, but it's not enough. That's not enough, man. And so leading from that, all there really is to do is your weekly activities, and that's kind of it. There are new, I guess, fun activities, more casual activities with the dragon racing that was added, which I think was a really good addition to the game. I think the dragon races are really fun. I did all the Kalimdor Cup. I actually had a lot of fun going to the old zones and doing that. Some were really fucking annoying, but I liked it. You know, it was a good addition. And I think them bringing it back as events and having it as like a staple casual activity for this expansion was really good. But the lack of overall other casual activities, what essentially happens is, especially towards the end of these bigger patches, the 0.1s, 0.2s, the player base just slowly dwindles because they don't have much to log in for. Maybe, for example, this most recent, at least for me, this most recent trading post, outside of getting the crab, I don't really care much for that stuff there. I'm not looking to wear a goofy treasure trove on my back, so I'm not going to spend 800 currency on that, right? I'm just going to save up all my stuff, and then I'm going to be good, you know? So something like this, if someone didn't care, that's a month. They can just not pay their sub and then come back the next month. We just had the 10.2 announcements, which I do want to talk about eventually as well. But overall, it's kind of just how the game is now. The game is built seasonal. It's almost, you could put it akin to something like Destiny 2, where I hope to God we don't ever get to something as grotesque as Destiny 2's microtransaction situation. But as it stands currently, we pay for the game, we pay for the sub, and then we do extra content, and then there are cosmetic rewards that they shove at us that they're like, hey, if you want to spend some extra money, here you go. And then you can buy the WoW tokens because they're trying to fight the gold bots, here you go, right? But realistically, there's just outside of your weekly activity, your T-Mog, your raid, your mount farm, depending on how many characters you want to do that with. Some people go ham, some people just do the one a week. There just isn't that much going on in pug content because everybody got their gear, everybody got what they wanted. Now they're just doing their random shit on the side, almost like weekly chores, just because they feel like doing it, because they like it. And that's what leads to people feeling like there's a far less player base when there's just... most of the player base is probably still there. They're just not really interacting with the same content you are because they got their reward and now they're done. And spending, like I said, 20 to 23 hours on just trying to get their character from 431 to 444, not including the gearing process required to get above that. The new event gives you decent gear. So, for example, I have a full set of 402 gear that I'm going to be using, and then I'm probably going to run Dawn of the Infinite with my guild, and they'll probably help me out getting some gear from there, and then I'll just kind of gear up from that point. And then from there, I'll be 441 doing my thing, chilling, just over time is how I'm planning on doing it. I'm not planning on pushing a lot of Mythic Plus because that's just that amount of time that I showed you just isn't worth it. So that's realistically why a lot of the player base feels far less than there actually is, because simply they're just doing less. But that's just how it goes with MMOs. That's just how it goes with seasonal content. At the start of the season, people are doing more. At the end of the season, people are doing less. That's why they're releasing content in seasons, so they always have something to come back to. And that's also probably why they do stuff like their big 6-month sub packages, because you come into a content season, you do the big 6-month sub package. After about 5 or 6 months, the other content comes in, and then you do another 6-month sub package, and then if you want the trader's tender, you can buy additional cosmetics. And that's just kind of how they're doing it. That's just kind of how it works right now. And I do think that the failures of Shadowlands did lead to the player base being lower than what it probably normally would be, because the expansion is good. And currently the gearing system allows people to be done way quicker than any other time, which is probably why people are feeling this way. There is something to be said as well about people not really feeling like they're improving their gear week to week, especially like lower end mythic raiders. That is something to be considered. But that's not really along the topic of the video. So I'll cut it there. That's at least my 2 shakes on it. It's just normal. It's just normal for how stuff goes. The game's in a decent state. It just is what it is. Next content patch, there'll be a ton more people, and be jamming like you normally always will be. So, thanks for watching.